My name is Robert. I drive delivery trucks around the country. It's not too bad of a job, really. I make 6 figures essentially doing nothing but driving and seeing the country. And I like doing those things. I'm a simple man. I'm an independent man. Owner-operator. Independent truck system. All that. I got a few people working for me, in case I need to take a day or so off. But I do most of it alone. I've done deliveries for all sorts of companies. The big bronze, the little bronze, and some I've never quite heard of. But none came as strange as the one I had to pick up this month. I remember seeing an ad in some bulletin board in Cosden City. Nice place. Little forgettable, but good nonetheless. I visit and deliver there primarily. Anyway, the ad was asking for a delivery guy who could be discreet and quiet about it. Usually, ads like this meant people were shipping gold or family heirlooms out of the usual way, something to do with tax evasion, or looking for a cheaper mover. I'm no criminal. I usually don't take the ads, but something about it appealed to me. It was from an auction house. They left an address, and very soon I found myself in the auction house itself, in a rather roomy office. I sat across from a man who looks like a jock, but a nameplate read Quentin. I must have found that amusing, because he seemed to look at me all funny. "I'm here about your ad." He nodded, brows oddly furrowing. "Good. We've been looking for one." He paused, dug around and walked out, beckoning for me to follow. He waved to a rather military-looking man on we entered storage. "This place popular?" I asked. I hadn't ever heard of it before. He didn't answer. We stopped in front of a large wooden crate, red and with these strange little dents all over it, dents that looked something like art. It was almost like a figure, yet without a face. "I need this shipped somewhere." "Looks small enough," I answered. "I need this delivered alone," he insisted, cutting me off. "Don't stuff anything else with it." I told him it'd cost extra. "I can cover the cost." I looked at it again. It seemed to make my head spin. "What is it?" He didn't answer. Not then. "Looks like some sort of contemporary art piece." "You could say that," he finished. And then he lifted the large box and handed it to me. It was a lot lighter than it looked. Like featherlight. I don't know how, but it was soft too, fuzzy in a birdy way. We continued walking. "What's in it?" "It better not be anything dangerous." "Nothing too important," he promised. We stopped where I'd parked my truck, and I opened the back door. "Here's the address." He handed me a sticky note. Now, here's the first weird part. I punched in the address onto my phone right then and there. And it was a field. Like a straight-up field in the middle of nowhere. This isn't anywhere. There'll be a guy all in orange there. Or well, he paused, staggered. A museum. Unfortunately, the box has certain, properties that won't allow them to take it themselves. What properties? I was starting to have second thoughts here. A woman joined the man and whispered something into his ear. A museum? Something about it didn't sit right with me. "Yes, a museum," the man affirmed. "The Katadesmos Museum." "Is this some sort of prank, or—" And then the woman beside him stepped up and I don't know, looked at me a certain way. Writing this now, I only realise how strange it was, but back then, back there, it made me feel as if I had to do what he said. And then the next thing I knew, I was getting food for the road, and then I was off. The only thing in the back, the strange red crate, and the road ahead of me, stretching. The sun beat down hard, heavy, even in the cool October, as I turned the aircon on. It didn't really help, but it made it tolerable. I ought to get it fixed, really. About noon, the aircon finally kicked in, maybe a bit too much, and it suddenly got very chilly. That was when the noise began. It was a current at first pressing, but soft. I didn't notice it really until the music I was listening to on the radio transitioned to an odd. I had turned down the radio, and there it was, a whistling. There was a buzzing just under it too, soft. I could almost make out a melody too. There was a small divider between me and the cargo, and I slid it open, one eye on the road, the other back there. The box, smaller than how I'd sworn it was, sat there. The whistling stopped, but I could swear I could still hear... No, feel it. I shut the divider and shuddered. It was getting a bit too cold. The aircon seemed stuck at the number 30, which didn't really make any sense to me. I had definitely not wanted it that cold. I turned up the radio and continued to drive. It was 2 hours after that when I felt it return. The soft whistling with that strange buzzing current. It sounded like electricity in a sense, but alive. Like bees. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard. And then I began to feel it. A soft scratching coming from behind me. I looked at the mirror and just for a second swore I could see something behind me. Something quick and flesh-coloured. The whistling was going up and down my skin. It felt like worms on my hands, neck, arms. It must have been the crate, I thought. So carefully, I opened the divider and found it still sitting there. It seemed to have turned a bit, but I assumed I had turned a bit too fast. But then I swear, I saw it pulse. Once, twice. And then it just sat there. The feeling disappeared, as did the whistling. I continued to drive until the sun began to set. I grew tired and pulled into a rest stop. The journey was quick. The destination was only a few hours away, but something about the drive was sapping me, and I grew too tired to drive. So I rolled in and parked it. I went inside the rest stop, greeted the sole man in charge of gas, bought a few snacks, and went back. I had a little sleeper in place behind me, a little cave-like thing just to the side, and so I set the bed open and laid myself on it. Sleep did not find me, not then, not yet. Whenever my eyes grew tired, and I started to close them, would I hear something? At least, that's how it began. There was a rattle, like a child's toy, coming from inside of my cargo. From the box. It had to be the box. The truck was clear, checked and kept free of any error. I had actually brought it to a dealer a few weeks ago. Everything had been fixed, save the air conditioning. That never seemed to work. And then it escalated. I closed my eyes. And then I heard it. Something else now. The small cry of a child from the cargo. It was muffled. Were they smuggling children? A child? Was that the cargo? My eyes shot open, and I gingerly opened a little viewing partition that separated me from the cargo. The reddish box sat there. There was no sound then, just quiet. Strange. And now that I'm recording this, I suddenly seem to realise that everything was quiet. No birds, no people. I could hear nothing but then a soft heartbeat that came not from myself, but from the box. And then I had the feeling that I should open the box, that I was chosen to open it. This disturbed me, but mostly because I wouldn't get paid if I fell prey to curiosity. I had already suffered that consequence once before, when I was younger. I did not like it. I found a box of little pills and swallowed one, laid back onto the bed, and fell asleep. It felt like 5 minutes before I was awakened by a rumbling. My eyes shot open, and then I heard a scream coming from inside the rest stop. "What?" I mumbled, confused. I felt buzzing again in the air, through my skin. It itched. I felt this presence of some sort, as if there was something malevolent in the room with me. But in my sleep-deprived state, I was absolutely sure it was just in my mind. I don't know why, but my mind immediately thought of the cargo. It didn't feel as if the thought was mine. No. My second thought was to just get out before whatever that scream came from belonged to me. But I slid open the partition, and the box was open. It had been broken out of, little bits and pieces torn, wood splayed all over the back of my truck. The cargo door was open too, hanging up by the sides, breezing by the wind. I wanted to leave, but I could not. It was a compulsion of some sort, a compulsion to ensure the safety of the cargo. It was just like the woman in the beginning who had somehow convinced me to take it. Of course I didn't realise this back then, but now those thoughts have been planted in my mind. I guess that's why I stepped out and headed towards the rest stop. The shop there was dark, and I could only see by the light of a flickering street lamp. I found my phone and hit the flashlight. "Hello?" I called. "Clerk?" The door was swinging open in a wind I could not feel. I made the decision to enter. Or had that too been planted in my mind, cast directions to keep the cargo safe? Nevertheless, a wave of fear began to overtake me. I swung the door open and it cried, screaming as it did. Then I saw the blood spattered across the room, and the splayed, slain body of the "Help!" groaned the clerk, yellow store uniform now stained with blood. His voice was gooey as he spoke. His insides were on the outside, chest torn open and exposed. I was about to call the police when I saw it, perched just above him on the counter, the yellow glowing eyes of a creature. I couldn't see much in the darkness, and I slowly began to raise my phone to witness it. I regret doing so. Its body was like that of a mon's, naked and covered in this slick brown fur, rat-like. It had a set of black charred wings on its back. But the worst was its face. It whistles and perched, staring into my eyes, paralysing my nerves. It had my face. The damn thing had my face. Whatever influence the woman from before had bewitched me was gone now. I felt my legs move and I ran as fast as I could from the monstrous thing that had stolen my face and into the safety of my truck. I turned the keys, hit the pedal, and started to drive as fast as I could. I heard a scream and a whistle behind me, and I pressed the gas harder until I was sure I was speeding down the interstate. And yet in the mirror, I could see it. Winged shadows darting and whistling until there was a bump from behind, and footsteps, talons scratching metal in the cargo hold. Oh God! It was now in there with me, just a little partition separating us both. One hand of mine reached for a knife I kept only for emergencies, one I never used. And then I rammed the brake as an arching building suddenly emerged in the fields ahead of me. A building that I swear had not been there before. It was old, ancient, and yet, in a way, new. Looking at it hurt my head, and I avoided it, stopping a few meters away. I heard a whistle behind me. I unbuckled myself and prepared. No noise now. I gingerly opened the partition and nothing. No monstrous thing. Just a strange red crate inside the cargo hold, just waiting to be delivered. No, where I had seen a figure etched into the box was now something else. It had shifted, and I could swear it was my face on it now. A man in all orange appeared and knocked on the side of the door. "You have the crate?" I nodded. "Good. We will take your story." I felt compelled, like before. I stepped out and headed to the bark, the man right behind me. The cargo doors were open, still hanging gently. Nothing seemed to be wrong. "What is that?" I asked. "There was something. It had my face." The man in orange ignored my question, instead handing me a little notebook. "Write your story down here. All will come to pass." And then he handed me a little box, old and red, like the crate. Inside was money, cash that was dated before I was even born. I turned to ask him about it, but he was gone. So was the museum. I was alone in the field, with impossible money and my truck. And I started to write then and there, as if I would not be able to leave if I didn't. I wrote, and this is where I am now. Oh God, what have you people done? Where is my face?